Hello, this is Alex St. Clair, and this is my presentation for ETD 560, and my unit is called Using Google Classroom for Parents. These are my unit goals and objectives. You can read through those. I'll just run through them quick. My goals were basically for parents to develop a knowledge of Google Classroom so that they'd be able to assist their students. I also want them to understand why we're using Google Classroom for their students' instruction and be able to create media or materials to be attached to assignments. These are not complicated or anything like that. These are just basic pictures or video to attach. The objectives were to locate and identify sections in Google Classroom. So that's like assignments, materials, work, things like that. Wanted them to be able to find the grades and view feedback from the teacher. Wanted them to be able to add attachments to assignments. Wanted them to be able to complete tasks using Google Tools. So it'd be Word, slides, things like that. Nothing overly complicated. This is not a unit on the Google Tools. This was a unit focused on Google Classroom. We understand, though, that those tools may come into use when we're using Google Classroom. I also want them to be able to submit assignments because got the work done. Let's show you how to turn it in too. My audience analysis. These are mostly adults in their 20s to 30s. That's about the average age range of the parents in our district. In here, we are also including grandparents as a note because we have a lot of students that stay with grandma and grandpa, live with grandma and grandpa, or spend a lot of time with grandma and grandpa. So we wanted them included here. Just as a note, we thought the materials would adequately support them, but we wanted to make sure that they were noted here. Most of them are coming from a rural Michigan background. Most have not used an LMS, but most of them will have had experience with mobile devices, phones, tablets, or other electronics, as well as the web. Objective and assessment alignment, you can read it here. Basically want them to be able to answer questions, just little check-ins, participate in discussions, and then the last section, which you'll see when we get over to Google Classroom, is assignments for them to complete on their own. They'll be graded against a rubric about their level of independence, the accuracy of the work, it was turned in, whether or not it was turned in, as well as a section for notes. If there's something that doesn't quite fit into a nice, neat box, there's a spot to note that on my end. So, and any other observations could be noted. Objective content and activity alignment. Most of the content is delivered through videos and slideshows. There are discussions and comments to be made too. They'll also be doing assignments that require them to do an action and submit it. So that could be something through slides, something through Jamboard, and attaching a photo using a mobile device or Chromebook. Accessibility and usability. I included clear labels for the topic sections. Topics build upon each other in a logical manner. It's not all scattered. We explain the sections progressively, and that makes logical sense before we actually get them into assignments. They are very aware of the different functions, and before they do something, there's going to be a video or a slideshow or both that explain how to do that. Also included here were emojis for icons. That's something I brought over from the elementary classroom. It helps them identify sections easier and relate to the subject that's being discussed or the assignment. Included with our content is the slideshow, as well as a video of me giving commentary about the slideshow. So if they need the video, it's there. If they need the slideshow just for review or for steps or for comparisons, those are there too. They can bring that up independently. Implementation plan. Originally, this was going to be rolled out at my school. COVID kind of put an end to that because of restrictions. So this is going to be saved and possibly used next year with parents to help them understand how to use Google Classroom. Also, it can be rolled out with parents that are new to the school system or new to the district. This is planned to be used as like a parent night option, but if parents were not able to attend that night, this is set up in such a way that it could be done remotely. Final thoughts. Planning is key. I plan for my regular classroom, but there's some additional planning that needs to go into this for adults. Some things can carry over. Other things need to be implemented or done differently because we are working with adults. Accessibility is a must. We may have people that require it, and if we build those in from the beginning, the people that require it are already covered. We know that they're covered. We know that our items are accessible and usable. Also, people that may not be identified with a specific disability or a specific need, they are covered as well because those options are already built in. Backwards design was a huge help here. What do we want them to learn? What is not fitting that goal or that objective? So if it's not fitting it, what can we put in there that would work better? So working backwards with, there's our end goal, building around that really helped me out a ton here. So let's get you over to my Google Classroom, and I'll see you there right now. All right, and here we are at my Google Classroom. So for this here, again, the parts are laid out, part 1 to 6, with some additional materials at the bottom. Part 1 is getting started. Reminds me a lot of like the first modules that we do in a lot of our SVSU classes. We're going to do a course overview. And again, included here is a YouTube video of me going through this slideshow. So they get the commentary of the slideshow and the back and forth of me discussing it and hitting the high points. So we talk about with them. First thing is going to be the objectives for the unit. And then we're going to talk about the activities that we're doing in this unit. And again, these are activities that are going to closely resemble activities their students are going to be doing. So they're getting that experience. Heading back to the Google Classroom. Introductions. The first thing, again, like we introduce ourselves. Let's get everybody introducing themselves on this Google Classroom unit. Build that sense of community a little bit more. Part 2, the basics of Google Classroom. We're going to break down what is Google Classroom and why are we using that with our students, even our elementary kids. Why are we using that? Why don't we just stick to the good old ways of doing things? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what Google Classroom is. And again, slideshows there for them to view or review if they need to, as well as the YouTube video. My face is in there, again, giving that personal connection. I'm speaking through it, giving the extra commentary. So they know that I'm there and I'm the one delivering the content. We compare Google Classroom quizzes and questions. What's their difference? What's the same? Why do we use this instead of that? We're going to talk about that. After that is a discussion talking about, it's a question here, and I'm asking them to participate by also responding to others. We're going to talk about the difference between the quizzes and the questions. Assignments and materials. I have so many kids that seem to think if it's a material, it must not be important. So we're going to talk about what is an assignment? What is a material in Google Classroom? Do I really have to do both? And we're going to talk about why it's important to view both those things. And we'll talk about, again, the kids don't always see a difference between those two things. They're not quite sure, or maybe I can skip this, or I don't have to do that. We're going to ask the parents, what's the difference between those two things? Part 3, using the devices with Google Classroom. So the biggest focus on this section is basically using the devices and their cameras to submit assignments. That was a need that we saw for a lot of our parents, that they didn't know how necessarily to do that. Some did. Some could get partway there. So these take them through the steps of taking a picture with their Chromebook and turning it in. These are some outside videos that I brought in here because they were very clear, they're very helpful, and they're short and to the point. So how to do it with a Chromebook, how to do it with a phone. Also included in some of these two are directly from Google, their steps. right from Google. And then here too, it may sound silly, but I ask parents here too, what is their comfort level? Do they feel more comfortable taking the picture on their phone? Do they feel more comfortable using their student's Chromebook? Can they use either? Is it really that big of a deal to them? Or do they not feel confident using either of those? So maybe we can provide some additional training, some extra steps on how to do that for those ones that are neither. They're not comfortable doing either. Part 4 is finishing the assignment. So attaching something to an assignment. We go through the steps in that again because that is so critical. A lot of times it's going to be a photo or a video. Sometimes it might be something else though. So let's talk about how things are attached. Finish an assignment. This is a big one. Lots of kids forget it and lots of parents say, well, they did it. Well, they may have done it, but they didn't turn it in to me. This goes through how critical it is, that last step of clicking turn in. I've also got like nice little steps and checklist here that we created in an earlier module. And I've got that included here too. So it's kind of a reminder. Here's the steps before we turn something in. When we go down to grades and comments, I have a video here showing them where to navigate to find those comments, to find that grade on that assignment that has been turned in. So how do we get there? How do we respond to it? Last part here with the hammer, well, almost last part, is putting it all together. Parts 1 to 4 were really about building a knowledge of the different functions of Google Classroom and why we're using it. Here we're putting it all together. Before we get into the assignments, I do an assignment intro here. Talks about each assignment and kind of like what they're going to be doing in it. And then I have a PDF version of the rubric that they're going to be graded against. They're not getting a grade. I just want to know their level of independence, their level of completion, if it was actually turned in, as well as I've left a spot there for comments. So maybe it's something that doesn't fit nicely into those categories, but it's an observation I made on their assignment, and I want to record that too. Then each one is the assignment. This one here, assignment with an attachment. This is an assignment, already comes with the attachment. I want them to go into slides and click on the boxes and change the text. It's asking them to fill in some things in an About Me assignment. Going to Jamboard, that was a app that we found was a good compromise for a lot of students and teachers because it's like a nice whiteboard. So this asks them to use the Jamboard, move some things around, and then submit. Down here, our last assignment is the Say Cheese assignment. This is where we're getting to that taking a picture, attaching it, and turning it in. This is important because we had a lot of families that said, my child is struggling using the Chromebook for example, math or writing. Can they do it on paper and turn it in? Or can they do it in another way and still turn it in? Yeah, but I am totally fine with that. I just want the work. But I also need to see the work, and I need to have record of the work. So to do that, they're going to need to take a picture. For here, they're going to be doing a selfie for their assignment. They're going to be taking a picture and then attaching it and turning it in. Also included here is a link back specifically to part 3 that discusses how to do that. Finally, here, part 6 is wrap up and reflections, just as we're doing now, a lot of us. We're wrapping up the class. We're going to wrap it up and we're going to reflect on our most valuable learning. Where do we still need to grow? This is important for them so they know basically what they've gotten out of this class. It's also important for me for as we go down the line and I am distributing resources or I'm planning another parent night. What do these people still need help with? Down here, these are the sections that are not assignments, but they're more resources for families. There's a Google Tools section. The main focus of this unit was on Google Classroom and its functions. That being said, there are going to be times where they're going to need to know what a tool is or how to use a tool. I have a general tool overview here of all of the tools included with G Suite. Over here are specific programs. So maybe they understand Google Docs just fine, but they're struggling with Google Sheets or Google Jamboard. This will lead them to just that specific slide on that element, as well as resources and help with that. And then down here, additional resources. I've got a contact me section. They can email me or call my school phone. The water cooler, just for basic general discussion. Maybe they've found something that's very helpful. They can post it there. Maybe they have found a better resource that I wasn't aware of. Bring it to the water cooler. Questions and answers. Is there a question about the assignments or the unit as a whole that you're looking for an answer to? Maybe someone else in our class or our community can add to that. Maybe I can answer that specifically. Also down at the bottom, I've included 2 outside resources, Common Sense Media, their guide to Google Classroom, as well as EdTech's quick rundown for parents. Just extra helpful things. They're good, solid resources, so I wanted to bring them in here. All right. Thank you for checking out my presentation. I can't wait to see what everyone else has done with theirs. Bye for now, everybody.